Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the Razor Ball Python. It's a brand new dark gene, first discovered just a few years ago over here in the United States. It's still in its infancy. Just a couple razor combinations have been made and posted over on Morphmarket. I just kind of randomly stumbled into it. And the razor is pretty interesting. It's actually allelic with black pastel. So if you actually make a combination with the razor and the black pastel, you get a completely black and patternless snake that has a line right down the top of the snake, which is completely different than you'd see in the super black pastel. And if you actually make the super razor, it actually has quite a bit of pattern. It's kind of an interesting gene, completely different than anything that's even close to black pastel. So today I want to jump over the internet and I want to give you a little bit more information on this brand new Razor Ball Python gene. Alright, so I'm going to jump over here on the world of ball pythons, and I want to start with the big morph list. And I actually came over here and did a search for the razor, and to my surprise, nothing actually showed up over here on the world of ball pythons. This is usually where a lot of people will take credit for the world's first combinations or the first producer of a certain gene or certain combination of genes. So I was kind of surprised that the razor wasn't actually over there. Let me tell you, if you produce this for the first time, you should probably come over here and list your combinations and take credit for being the first person to produce the razor. I actually kind of stumbled into it over here on Morphmarket. Take a look at this. This is the Razor Ball Python produced by Kicks Balls. And if you actually look over here, this is first produced over here in New York. And as far as the visual appearance of the razor, I'd say this is really similar to a black pastel as far as the visual appearance. A lot of times the black pastels will have a really dark background and they'll have kind of this coppery color to a lot of your black pastels. As a matter of fact, the cinnamon is really close to the black pastel, and a lot of people say the difference between most cinnamons and most black pastels is the black pastels will actually have more of this coppery colored pattern to it, where the cinnamons won't be as coppery as some of your black pastels. So if you actually compare this to an actual black pastel, so take a look at this. This is the black pastel compared to the razor. It looks really similar to the black pastel. And kind of the tricky part about this project is if you actually took an allelic combination between the black pastel and the razor, you bred it to something else, half the offspring come out as black pastel, half come out as razor, you might be hard-pressed trying to figure out which ones are the black pastels and which ones are the razors. They are incredibly close, even closer than the difference between the cinnamon and the black pastel. But here's what happens if you actually take the razor and you work it into the black pastel. Take a look at this. This is a crazy looking combination. And when I first saw this, I was like, what in the world is the black razor? This is the one I first saw, and it kind of caught my attention. I was like, how do you make a black patternless snake with a line right down the top? And I can't recall any super black pastels having a line like this right down the top of the snake, so you know it's definitely different than the super black pastel. As a matter of fact, I brought up a few examples of some combinations that are really close to this. So you can actually look at the super black pastel, which is really close, except it doesn't have the line right down the top of the snake. You can actually make a similar combination with the combination of the black pastel and the cinnamon, and you can actually make what's called an 8-ball. This is the 8-ball with a black pastel and the cinnamon, and some of these can be a little bit variable just because the black pastel and the cinnamons can be really variable from one example of the gene to the other. But I've yet to see one that actually has a really strong line right down the top of the back. And you can also make a similar combination with the super cinnamon. I actually pulled that one up over here, and take a look at this. All of them are really close, but when you work razor into the black pastel, you actually get that really strong line right down the top, which is a really interesting effect. And take a look at this. This is what really surprised me too. I actually pulled up a picture of the super razor. Take a look at this. 2 copies of the razor gene. And let me tell you, this completely separates the razor from the black pastels and the cinnamons. You actually see a lot of pattern coming through and kind of a jumbled up pattern on the side, and it's almost like a double dark, where it really doubles down on the dark with two copies of the razor. And if it was actually similar to the cinnamon or the black pastel, just a different version, you would expect that this would be a completely black and patternless snake, where it's not. So this is definitely a new gene in ball pythons. And let me tell you, when you're first looking at new genes, the first thing you want to establish is that you actually have a new gene. You just don't have, I've actually seen a lot of people where they think they have a new gene and they start looking through all the different genes and come to find out it's actually another gene that they're not familiar with. As a matter of fact, I'm always wondering myself, I see a lot of these brand new ones popping up and I'm like, hey, am I missing something? Is this similar to something we already have? And some of you guys may be a little keen on some of these new genes popping up, but as far as I recall, there's nothing that's really close to the razor gene, which is pretty amazing. So here is the pastel, and kind of the interesting thing with the pastel is when you work the pastel with the black pastel, you get the black pewter, which can be really variable from one black pewter to another, because the pastel can be really variable. I've actually seen some really bright yellow pastels and some that look kind of like a reddish colored, kind of like a rusty pastel. And I've actually seen some black pastels that are all the way looking almost like a dark normal all the way to a rusty brown normal. So I've actually seen some black pewters that are all over the board from one extreme to the other. So I actually pulled up the combination of the razor and the pastel, and take a look at this. This is kind of interesting. At first glance, this looks similar to one version of a black pewter, working the black pastel into the pastel. I've actually seen some black pewters that are pretty similar to this, which is kind of interesting. They actually made another combination, so they only had two combinations over here, one with pastel and one with lesser. So that was actually a good one. As a matter of fact, if I was actually working on this project, I would definitely go for the pastel to see if you get a similar effect to the black pewters, and then you want to mix it with the lessers to see if it's in the blue-eyed leucistic. That's always good with the new gene, to see if you have something in the blue-eyed leucistic. And this is what a lesser looks like, and I consider the lesser to be pretty much the king of blue-eyed leucistics. If you mix lesser with pretty much any other gene in the blue-eyed leucistic, you end up with an all-white snake with bright blue eyes. So take a look at this. If you actually mix the lesser with the razor, this is what you get. You get a razor lesser. And I was actually looking at the black pastels with the lesser, and I actually saw some of them that were pretty close to this. I'd say so far, just between these two genes, it's really close to the black pastel. And this is pretty much based on what I've seen that it's definitely different than the black pastel, and in some combinations it's similar to the black pastel. And what we really need for the razor is a combination that breaks it out, that it's really impressive and really makes it shine, completely different than what you could make with the black pastel. So I was actually kind of brainstorming as far as which direction I would take this project as far as kind of the next step. What I would actually do is I'd take the razor and I would probably mix it with het red axanthic. So keep in mind the het red axanthic and the black pastel are also allelic. So this would be kind of interesting, taking the razor, working it into black pastel. Another really good combination is taking the razor and working it into clown, because the clown is the king of combos for recessive combinations. If you can make some really impressive razor clown combinations, that might put the razor on the map. Another one that I'd probably go after is a razor leopard. The leopard is pretty much the king of combos when it comes to dark genes, dark co-dominant genes, and you can make some really amazing leopard combinations with pretty much anything. I bet the leopard would definitely give you a different result than the black pastel, working it in with the razor. But I think that's what the razor really needs. It needs that one breakout combination that really sets it apart from all the other jeans where you really can't make anything like it. It's kind of like the champagne when the champagne first came out and they were mixing it in with a lot of combinations, and it was so visually dominant and overwhelmed everything. People were kind of losing hope with the champagne until they made combinations like the gray matter, where you get this pied metallic looking snake that just kind of blew everyone away. And I think something like that is what the razor really needs. So I actually came over here to the genetic calculator over on Morphmarket, and take a look at this. They actually had the razor over here on the genetic calculator, and I plugged it in, the black pastel razor bred to a normal, and according to this, it is not an allelic combination. And let me tell you, this right here is incorrect. We need to actually, someone needs to go in here and actually correct this. And it's kind of interesting with new genes. A lot of times you jump over here on the calculators, and a lot of times we really don't know how they react, or the genetics as far as reacting with other combinations. So if this was actually an allelic combination, for pretty much for the true definition of allelic combination, you'd actually get 50% black pastels, 50% razors. You wouldn't get any normals, and you wouldn't reproduce the parents. You wouldn't get the black pastel razor. And I actually pulled up an example over here of a true allelic combination, and that is the combination of the black pastel and the cinnamon, otherwise known as the 8-ball. So if you take the 8-ball and you bred it to a normal, you'd get 50% black pastel, 50% cinnamon. And I actually pulled up one more thing over here. Take a look at this. This is the black razor, and this is what the originator of the gene actually says. This is the combination of the razor and the black pastel. And this is Fred Kick over here. This says, this girl acts like a super. Every baby will be either razor or black pastel. So here, from the originator of this gene, we know that this is definitely an allelic combination. So I definitely think the razor has a lot of potential. We just need to find that one combination that'll break the razor out from the rest of the genes, especially we want to break it out, from the cinnamon and the black pastel, and show that this can really produce some completely different, amazing combinations. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Catnip asks, how do we purchase snakes from Europe or Africa if we see something over on Morphmarket? And that is a very good question. So keep in mind, Morphmarket is essentially the eBay of reptiles. It's actually just a whole bunch of different sellers that are just, a lot of them are breeders, some of them are businesses from all over the world. So if you actually see something from another part of the world and you want to ship it in to wherever you're located at, you have to contact that individual seller to see if they're set up to ship worldwide. And let me tell you, if you're actually shipping snakes worldwide, it can be extremely expensive. I was actually getting some quotes from shipping here in the United States, just shipping in Canada, which is kind of crazy because some places in the United States, it's not really that far from the Canadian border. And to ship just across the border, it cost anywhere from like $650, I was getting quotes, all the way up to over $800 just to ship one snake. So if you're actually looking at something maybe for tens of thousands of dollars for a really high-end snake, or if you're buying a whole bunch of snakes, it may be worthwhile shipping around the world. But other than that, I would think, just for your regular snake that's just a few $100s, probably the shipping is not really practical as far as buying something like that. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.